My name is Amelia Carter, and I'm 29 years old. I live in Boston, Massachusetts, and work as a graphic designer. Christmas has always been my favorite holiday, but last year, something happened that changed how I feel about it forever. It still haunts me to this day. It was December 24th, and the city was buzzing with holiday cheer. I had put off Christmas shopping until the last minute, as usual. The malls were packed with families, couples, and last-minute shoppers like me. I arrived at the Newbury Center Mall around 6 p.m., hoping to grab a few gifts before everything closed. As I moved from store to store, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I chalked it up to my imagination. The mall was crowded, and it wasn't unusual to bump into the same faces as you wandered around. But then I noticed him, a man in his late 30s or early 40s. He was dressed in a gray hoodie and jeans, and he seemed to appear everywhere I went. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. But when I left the gift shop on the second floor and saw him again near the escalator, my heart sank. He wasn't browsing or carrying any shopping bags. He was just there, staring at me. I decided to test my theory. I walked into a candle store, pretending to be interested in a display of holiday scents. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him linger outside for a moment before stepping inside. He didn't look at the candles or speak to the sales associate. He just stood there, pretending to browse but clearly watching me. I felt a chill run down my spine. My hand started to shake as I grabbed a random candle and headed to the register. I needed to get out of there. After paying, I walked briskly toward the exit, hoping to lose him in the crowd. I weaved through a group of teenagers and ducked into a toy store, hoping he wouldn't follow. But as I glanced behind me, there he was, standing near the entrance. His eyes locked onto mine, and he smirked. Panic set in. I clutched my shopping bags tightly and made my way to the parking garage. The mall's parking lot was poorly lit, and the faint hum of Christmas carols playing from nearby speakers did little to calm my nerves. I scanned the area for any sign of the man but didn't see him. I reached my car, a small sedan parked near the far end of the garage, and quickly started loading my bags into the trunk. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. "Excuse me, miss," a deep voice called out. I turned to see him standing a few feet away, holding something in his hand. "You dropped this," he said, extending what looked like a piece of paper. My stomach churned. I knew I hadn't dropped anything. "No, I'm good," I replied, trying to sound calm. "Are you sure?" He pressed, stepping closer. "Stay back." I snapped, fumbling to close the trunk. I hurried to the driver's side door and got in, locking the doors immediately. My hands were shaking so badly that I struggled to insert the key into the ignition. That's when he pulled out a knife. He started banging on the driver's side window, shouting something I couldn't make out. The blade glinted in the dim light as he tried to force the handle. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I finally managed to start the car and slammed my foot on the gas. The tires screeched as I sped out of the garage, narrowly missing a parked SUV. As I reached the main road, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw him standing in the garage entrance, staring after me. My hands were trembling, and tears streamed down my face as I drove to the mall security office. I reported the incident, and they immediately contacted the police. An officer arrived within minutes, and I gave them a description of the man. As it turned out, I wasn't the only one he had targeted that night. The officer told me he was a wanted criminal who had been attacking shoppers in various malls across the state. One woman wasn't as lucky as I was. She had been hospitalized after he ambushed her in another parking lot earlier that evening. To this day, I can't walk through a mall or park in a garage without feeling a wave of anxiety. Christmas, once my favorite holiday, now feels tainted by that horrifying experience. I'm grateful I made it out alive, but I'll never forget the look in his eyes as he stood outside my car, knife in hand. If there's one thing I've learned, it's to always trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. My name is Jessica Miller, and I'm 26 years old. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Denver, Colorado. I've always loved Christmas. It's the time of year when my family and I come together, decorate the house, and share warm memories. But last year, something happened that ruined Christmas for me forever. It started on December 20th. I came home from work, juggling grocery bags and my purse, when I noticed a bright red envelope in my mailbox. There was no return address, just my name written in shaky, uneven handwriting. At first, I thought it was a Christmas card from a neighbor or an old friend, but when I opened it, my stomach dropped. Inside was a photo of my family and me sitting at our dinner table, laughing during a meal. The photo was clearly taken through our living room window. I had no idea how long someone had been watching us. The card read, "Merry Christmas. Love, your secret admirer." I froze, holding the card in my hands as my mind raced. Who could have sent this? How did they get so close to my house without anyone noticing? I immediately showed the card to my parents. My dad tried to brush it off, saying it was probably a prank. My mom, on the other hand, looked as worried as I felt. "We should call the police," she said. I did just that. The officer who came to our house said they'd file a report, but admitted there wasn't much they could do since the card didn't include any threats. "Just keep an eye out for anything unusual," he said before leaving. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined someone standing outside, staring into our windows. The next day, I went out and bought security cameras for the front and back of the house. For a couple of days, things seemed normal. We went about our usual Christmas activities, decorating cookies, wrapping presents, and watching holiday movies. I tried to push the creepy card out of my mind, but the uneasiness lingered. On Christmas Eve, my family was in the living room watching Home Alone. It was almost midnight, and I was half asleep on the couch when my phone buzzed. It was a notification from the security camera app. "Motion detected at the back door," the alert read. My heart stopped. I sat up and opened the app, and what I saw made my blood run cold. A man, dressed in all black, was at our back door. He was hunched over, fiddling with the lock. His face was obscured by a hoodie, but I could see he was wearing gloves and carrying something in his other hand, a crowbar. I whispered to my dad, who immediately turned off the TV. My mom grabbed her phone and called 911 while I kept watching the live feed. The man tried the lock a few more times before stepping back and looking directly into the camera. That moment will haunt me forever. He tilted his head, as if he knew we were watching him, then raised a hand and waved. Within minutes, we heard sirens in the distance. The man must have heard them too, because he bolted, disappearing into the darkness. The police arrived and searched the area, but they didn't find him. They did, however, take the footage from the security camera and promised to investigate. Christmas morning was tense. We tried to carry on as usual, opening presents and having breakfast, but the fear was impossible to ignore. Later that afternoon, the police called with an update. They had identified the man and arrested him at his apartment. He was a known stalker with a history of breaking into homes. When they searched his place, they found a disturbing collection of photos, most of them of me. The police said he had been watching our house for months. He had followed me home from work several times and even taken pictures of me through the windows when I was alone. Knowing that he had been so close, watching my every move, made my skin crawl. I couldn't stop thinking about the Christmas card and how he had been bold enough to leave it in my mailbox. Now, I can't look at Christmas the same way. I installed more cameras and even replaced the locks, but the fear hasn't gone away. Every time I see a red envelope, my chest tightens. Christmas is supposed to be a time of joy and love. But for me, it's a reminder of how quickly your sense of safety can be shattered. I still feel like someone's watching me, even though the man is behind bars. If I'd learned anything from this, it's that you can't take your safety for granted. Always trust your instincts and protect yourself, because you never know who might be lurking in the shadows. Ready to feel a chill run down your spine? Join us in the shadows and dive into the world of terrifying tales and creepy encounters. Subscribe now to Shivers in the Dark and hit the bell so you never miss a story that keeps you up at night. My name is Ethan Parker. I'm 32 years old, and I live alone in a quiet neighborhood in Portland, Oregon. I've always loved Christmas, the lights, the snow, the warmth of family gatherings. But last year, something happened on Christmas Eve that changed everything for me. It's a night I'll never forget. I had just returned from a small family gathering at my sister's house. It was around 11 p.m., and the streets were silent except for the occasional crunch of snow under my boots. As I walked up to my house, I noticed something strange. My front door was slightly open. At first, I thought I might have forgotten to lock it before leaving. I live in a safe area, so I didn't panic right away. But as I got closer, I noticed the faint outline of muddy footprints leading inside. My heart started to race. I hesitated on the doorstep, my breath fogging up in the cold air. Could someone be inside? I thought about calling the police, but part of me didn't want to overreact. Maybe it was nothing. Cautiously, I stepped inside, closing the door behind me as quietly as I could. The house was dark except for the faint glow of the Christmas tree in the living room. That's when I saw them, muddy footprints trailing across the hardwood floor, leading toward the hallway and disappearing near my bedroom. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I slipped off my coat and shoes, grabbed a kitchen knife from the counter, and followed the footprints. The house was eerily quiet. Every creak of the floorboards felt deafening. As I approached my bedroom, I noticed the door was ajar. I pushed it open slowly, my hand trembling. The room looked like it had been ransacked. Drawers were open, clothes were strewn everywhere, and my bedside table was empty. That's when I heard it, the faint sound of breathing. It was coming from the closet. I froze, gripping the knife tighter. My mind was racing. Should I open the closet? Should I run and call the police? Before I could decide, the closet door creaked open, and I saw him. A man was crouched inside, his face partly hidden by a black hoodie. In one hand, he held a crowbar. In the other, a bag filled with what looked like my belongings. "Get out!" I shouted, my voice shaking. The man stared at me, his eyes wide with surprise. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he dropped the bag and bolted past me, nearly knocking me over. I chased him down the hallway, but by the time I reached the front door, he was gone, disappearing into the night. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my hands trembling. My mind was racing. I called the police, trying to keep my voice steady as I explained what had happened. The officers arrived within minutes. They searched the house and confirmed that the man was no longer inside. They found the bag he had left behind, which was filled with my stolen belongings, electronics, jewelry, even some wrapped Christmas presents. The police explained that the man had likely been targeting homes where families were away for holiday gatherings. He must have assumed no one would be home that night. The thought made my stomach turn. What if I hadn't come home early? What if he had waited for me to return? The officers assured me they would patrol the area and try to catch him, but their words did little to calm my nerves. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house made me jump, and I kept imagining the man's face, his wide, startled eyes staring back at me from the closet. Christmas Day felt different. The warmth and joy I usually associated with the holiday were replaced by a lingering sense of unease. I kept replaying the events in my mind, wondering how close I had come to something far worse. I've since installed an alarm system and cameras around the house, but the fear hasn't completely gone away. Every time I come home, I hesitate at the door, half expecting to find it open again. Christmas used to be my favorite time of year, but now it serves as a reminder of how fragile our sense of security can be. I'm grateful I came home when I did, but the thought of what might have happened still sends chills down my spine.